for future purposes. Do we pay zakat on retirement accounts?
Yeah, so retirement accounts are a really tricky thing, especially, I can only speak to the American context, because there are so many different types of retirement accounts. And even if you just think about our accounts in general, whether there's general savings, checkings, and then all the various retirement accounts, which we can speak, I'll break them into just a couple of buckets just to be easy for at least the American audience. So the American side, we have what's called a 401k, and we have we have a pension, which I think is also in Europe. And then we also have what's called an IRA. So to break these three apart, with a pension plan, where one has absolutely no access to that money at any time, they're not making necessarily voluntary contributions, there's mandatory contributions, and they cannot ever have access to $1 of that until they retire. In that case, there's no zakat that's due until one begins receiving that retirement income for their pension. And then they would simply pay on whatever their income is from that pension. But in the US, they have tried over the last few decades to eliminate the pension in order to absolve the government or the corporation of paying for someone's retirement. And they introduced what's called the 401k. And that's the tax code is called tax code 401 clause K, which was where employers would give incentives to the employee to save. So if the employee would save, as an example, $5,000 a year, the corporation would say we'd match up to a certain amount. Let's say it's $5,000 a year. So now the person says, I'll save $5,000. And then the employer says, I'll give you $5,000. And now they have $10,000 they saved that year. Now the advantage is that the $5,000 that you've paid is tax-free. And then, of course, the $5,000 that the company has matched is also tax-free. So this is offered to people who are in corporations that are usually well-to-do, right? They're not offered at small mom and pop stores. They're not offered typically in nonprofits. So it's a luxury vehicle of saving for one's retirement. There's different opinions that have been put out there. And I really am concerned about how Muslims save in the West and the implications of paying on your retirement or not paying on it. For many Muslims, what they do is they max out their 401k. So they take the maximum contribution that they could give and they save that. And then their employer matches that, which then means they have actually often very little surplus money in a checking or a savings account. So I deal with this regularly where people say, I have saved over years, hundreds of thousands, rather millions of dollars in my 401k because it appreciates because that money is invested into stocks and mutual funds and all kinds of other investment vehicles. And they say, I have almost nothing that's liquid. And so my opinion and the opinion of many other scholars in the West is that you need to pay on the full amount of your 401k. And the reason why is that you have chosen to put your money into an account that has these limitations. So the 401k tells you that if you put money into it, that you cannot withdraw until you're a certain age, typically around 65, without a penalty. And that penalty is 10% plus you're taxed on it. But my argument is that you're choosing to put money into an account with restrictions, and then that money is growing. And so in zakat, one of the rules in the books of fiqh is that if the money that's liable to growth is also liable to zakat. And this money is liable to growth. Every year it is appreciating. And the other concern is that if Muslims in the West withhold their zakat, their 401k from zakat, the majority of Muslim wealth will not be zakatable. And essentially it is telling the poor that I don't give you any money until I'm 65 years old. So I'm making money from 25 to 65 and you have no access to this until I retire. And then even if you do pay at that point, it becomes very difficult because paying on a massive lump sum of millions of dollars is very difficult on the nafs and very pricey. So I believe that Muslims should pay on their 401k. There's some opinions that say you can subtract a portion of the, possibly the tax or the penalty. And there's a lot of opinions on there. I don't want to go into it. I personally believe the more you can pay on it, the better. And if you need to take out some small percentage that you'd be penalized for, that is permissible, but not the ideal. Wallahu alam.
And is zakah only liable for an adult? So say if a child